At 25,000 feet above central Germany, the air is thin, bright, and brutally cold. The engines scream at the edge of their limits as German fighters claw upward, their noses pointed toward a formation of American bombers glittering in the winter sun. Long white contrails carve the sky into neat parallel lines. This is familiar territory. This is a fight the Luftwaffe has trained for. But today, something is wrong. The bombers are not alone. Off to the sides and then above them, American fighters hold position, steady, patient, unmistakably present. They do not peel away. They do not turn back toward the channel. They stay. Inside one German cockpit, a veteran pilot watches them in disbelief. He knows the distances. He knows the limits of fuel, of engines, of men. By every rule of air combat he has lived by, those fighters should have vanished long before now. Instead, they are still here. The realization arrives quietly, without drama or explosion. But once it settles in, it cannot be ignored. If American fighters can escort bombers this far into Germany, then something fundamental has changed. Below, the bombers continue on their course, unbroken. Ahead of them lie factories, rail yards, and cities the Reich has sworn to defend. And above them, for the first time, protection that does not fade with distance. In that frozen sky, in that single moment of recognition, one of Germany's most experienced airmen understands a truth that few others are ready to face. This is not just a new tactic. It is the beginning of the end. The pilot watching those fighters is not inexperienced. He is not young. And he is not easily impressed. His name is Adolf Galland. By the winter of 1943, Galland is one of the most famous fighter pilots in Germany. A decorated ace, a tactician, a man whose opinions carry weight, even if they are not always welcome. He has survived the brutal learning curve of modern air war and risen through the ranks, not by luck, but by understanding. Galland is not a fanatic. He's not a dreamer intoxicated by ideology. He's a professional airman, pragmatic, blunt, and shaped by combat rather than slogans. He has flown against the British. He has measured their strengths and weaknesses. And more importantly, he has studied his own side's failures. Years earlier, over southern England, Galland had watched German fighters turn back, not because the enemy had beaten them, but because fuel had run out. He had seen how quickly confidence dissolved when pilots were forced to abandon the fight simply to get home. That memory never left him. So when Galland looks up at American fighters still guarding their bombers deep inside Germany, his mind does not reach for excuses. It reaches for patterns. He understands that air wars are not decided by single battles or heroic last stands. They are decided by systems, by logistics, by whether a pilot can remain over the battlefield or must leave it. In that moment, Galland does not see a single mission. He sees the shape of what is coming. 3 years earlier, Adolf Galland had learned this lesson the hard way. In the summer of 1940, the skies over southern England had become a battlefield without borders. Day after day, German fighters crossed the channel to escort bombers striking British airfields, ports, and cities. At first, confidence ran high. The Luftwaffe believed it held every advantage that mattered: speed, firepower, experience. But over time, another reality began to assert itself. German fighters arrived over England already counting the minutes. Every turn, every climb, every burst of combat burned precious fuel. Pilots fought with one eye on the enemy and the other on their gauges, knowing that hesitation could mean never making it home. British fighters did not share that burden. The RAF rose from airfields just minutes away. They could engage, break off, refuel, and return again. The sky belonged to whoever could stay in it the longest. Galland watched missions unravel not because German pilots lacked courage, but because they were forced to disengage at the worst possible moment. Escorts peeled away while bombers pressed on alone. Formation discipline dissolved, losses mounted, and slowly, unmistakably, the initiative slipped away. Germany did not lose the Battle of Britain in a single catastrophic defeat. It lost it through exhaustion, through distance, through the quiet tyranny of fuel and time. Galland never forgot that. So when he sees American fighters deep over Germany in 1943, the memory of Britain rushes back with brutal clarity. Different aircraft, different enemy, same principle. The side that controls the range controls the sky. And once that balance tips, it rarely tips back. By 1942, the war in the air over Europe enters a new and dangerous phase. The United States Army Air Forces arrive with a doctrine unlike anything Germany has faced before. Not night bombing. Not hit-and-run raids, but daylight attacks, flown straight into the heart of the Reich. The theory is bold, almost defiant. Tight formations of heavy bombers, bristling with machine guns, will defend themselves. Precision, not terror, will break German industry. Factories, oil plants, rail hubs, struck accurately again and again in full view of the enemy. To German commanders, it sounds reckless, and at first, they seem right. Unescorted American bombers begin to appear over occupied Europe and Western Germany. The Luftwaffe rises to meet them in strength. Fighters slash through the formations, cannons tear into aluminum skins, bombers fall burning from the sky. Losses are severe, sometimes catastrophic. For a moment it feels like confirmation, proof that daylight bombing cannot survive against a determined defense, proof that courage and firepower are still enough. Adolf Galland watches these battles carefully. He sees the confidence return to German pilots, the sense that this enemy too can be beaten. Bomber crews are brave, disciplined, but vulnerable. Without escort, they bleed. Yet Galland remains uneasy. He knows this phase. He has seen it before. Early success built on the enemy's incomplete system, a doctrine not yet finished. Because the Americans are not improvising. They are building toward something. Each raid pushes deeper. Each mission gathers data. Routes are tested, defenses measured, losses analyzed, not ignored. The bombers keep coming. And with every passing week, Galland senses that these early victories are temporary, that they exist only because something is still missing. Protection. When it arrives, fully, decisively, the balance will shift. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but permanently. The daylight war has begun, and Germany has not yet seen its most dangerous phase. The change does not announce itself with a new aircraft or a dramatic battle. It arrives quietly, almost invisibly. American fighters beneath their wings appear metal tanks, ungainly, detachable, easy to overlook, external fuel tanks, drop tanks. To most observers, they seem like a minor technical detail, an engineer's solution, a logistical footnote. To Adolf Galland, they are something else entirely. Because range is not about speed or firepower, it is about time, about how long a pilot can remain where the fight is happening, and those tanks buy time. At first, the effect is subtle. American fighters begin appearing farther east than before, over targets they were never meant to reach. German pilots engage them, expecting the familiar pattern, a brief fight, then withdrawal. But the withdrawal never comes. Instead of turning back, the escorts remain. They hold their positions as the bombers press deeper into Germany. The old assumptions begin to fail, one mission at a time. Galland studies the reports. He listens to returning pilots. Again and again, the same detail appears. The fighters stayed. What makes the drop tanks so dangerous is not their sophistication, but their simplicity. They can be jettisoned before combat, restoring agility. They demand no new doctrine, only patience and planning. And once the system works, it scales. Factories produce tanks faster than engines. Crews adapt quickly. Routes extend. Gaps close. The German defense, built around predictable limits, starts to unravel. For the first time, Galland sees escorts covering bombers almost to their targets, sometimes beyond. The protective umbrella no longer collapses at the Reich's borders. This is the first crack in Germany's air defense. Not a dramatic breakthrough, not a single failed interception. Just the slow realization that the enemy's reach is growing, and that Germany's is not. For Adolf Galland, the war is not only unfolding in reports and intercept maps, it is reaching into his own family. Among the pilots flying Germany's increasingly desperate air defense is his younger brother, Wilhelm Ferdinand Galland. Like Adolf, he is a fighter pilot, skilled, confident, committed to his duty. But unlike Adolf, Wilhelm is still exposed to the full cost of the new reality forming in the sky. As American escorts push farther into German airspace, engagements grow more frequent and more lethal. The familiar rhythm of attack and withdrawal disappears. There are fewer safe moments, fewer chances to disengage. During one of these battles, Wilhelm does not return. The details are sparse: a mission, a clash with enemy fighters, a loss recorded on a page already crowded with names. For the Luftwaffe, it is another casualty in a widening war of attrition. For Adolf Galland, it is something else entirely. The war's logic, which he has been tracing intellectually for months, now becomes painfully personal. This is not an abstract failure of strategy. It is a human cost that cannot be argued away or postponed. Wilhelm's death is not the result of recklessness or poor flying. It is the result of a system being overtaken, of pilots being forced to fight under conditions that grow worse with every passing week. Galland understands this with brutal clarity. If experienced pilots like his brother are being lost now, then the future is already written. Training programs cannot replace them fast enough. New aircraft cannot compensate for empty cockpits. The Luftwaffe is not being defeated in a single decisive blow. It is being bled. And this loss, quiet, irreversible, confirms what Galland already fears. Germany is running out of time and out of men. By late 1943, the final piece falls into place. It is not immediately obvious. At first glance, it is simply another American fighter, sleeker than most, longer-legged, unfamiliar. But to Adolf Galland, its presence confirms everything he has been warning about. The aircraft is the P-51 Mustang. Unlike earlier escorts, the Mustang is not forced to choose between range and performance. It has both. With its efficient airframe and powerful engine, it can climb with German fighters, fight them on equal terms, and still remain with the bombers from the English coast to the heart of Germany and back again. This is not an incremental improvement. It is a structural one. For the first time, American bombers fly under a shield that does not fracture with distance. Wherever the formations go, the Mustangs go with them, above, beside, ahead, and they do not wait. Under new leadership, American fighter doctrine changes. Escorts are no longer tethered tightly to the bombers, reacting only when attacked. They are unleashed. Mustangs range forward, sweeping German airspace clear. They hunt fighters as they climb. They strike airfields. They force engagements on their own terms. The Luftwaffe is dragged into battle before it can even reach the bombers. For German pilots, the sky becomes hostile everywhere at once. There is no safe corridor, no predictable boundary where the enemy must turn back. Even the climb to altitude becomes deadly. Galland watches casualty lists grow longer. Veterans, men who survived Poland, France, Britain, and Russia, begin to disappear at an alarming rate. They are replaced by younger pilots with fewer hours, less experience, and no margin for error. Aircraft numbers still look respectable on paper, but skill is evaporating. Galland understands the implication immediately. An air force is not defeated when it runs out of planes. It is defeated when it runs out of pilots who know how to fight. With the arrival of the Mustang, that process accelerates beyond recovery. The Luftwaffe is no longer contesting air superiority. It is fighting for survival. By early 1944, the air war over Germany has become something entirely different from what it once was. It is no longer a contest of tactics or isolated battles. It is a grinding process of elimination. Every day, American bombers return. And every day, they return under escort. Dense, overlapping layers of fighters that stretch from the North Sea to the deepest industrial regions of the Reich. The Luftwaffe rises to meet them, but each interception now carries a cost that cannot be recovered. Experienced pilots fall first. Men who once defined German air superiority are forced into combat again and again, with little rest and no margin for error. They face enemies who choose when to fight, where to fight, and when to disengage. Survival becomes a matter of chance rather than skill. Training cannot keep pace. As losses mount, pilot instruction is shortened. Fuel shortages limit flight hours. New pilots arrive at frontline units with a fraction of the experience their predecessors once had. They are brave, but unprepared, sent into skies where mistakes are fatal. Aircraft production continues. On paper, the Luftwaffe still exists as a formidable force. In reality, it is hollowing out. Galland watches this collapse with growing frustration. He argues for change, for concentration, for preservation of what remains. But the system around him is rigid, slow, and increasingly disconnected from reality. Germany still has fighters. What it no longer has is time. The attrition is relentless. Each lost pilot represents not only a man, but years of training, instinct, and judgment that cannot be replaced. Each engagement tilts the balance further away from recovery. By the spring of 1944, the Luftwaffe is fighting battles it cannot win, with forces it cannot rebuild. Air superiority has not been seized in a single moment. It has been drained away, mission by mission, life by life, until there is nothing left to contest. By the spring of 1944, Adolf Galland no longer speaks in warnings. He speaks in conclusions. From his position inside the Luftwaffe's high command, the picture is impossible to ignore. Fighter units are shrinking. Veteran leaders are gone. New pilots arrive faster and die faster. Fuel shortages ground aircraft that still exist only on paper. The numbers deceive those who want to be deceived. Galland looks past them. He understands that air superiority is not measured by how many planes a nation can build, but by how many it can keep over the battlefield, day after day, without pause. Germany can no longer do that. Privately, Galland reaches a stark assessment. The air war is lost. Not in the future. Not after some decisive battle yet to come. It is already lost. Without control of the skies, everything else becomes impossible. Industry can be bombed at will. Transportation can be strangled. Troops can be isolated long before they ever reach the front. And when the invasion comes, wherever it comes, German forces will face it without protection from above. Galland understands what this means long before most are willing to accept it. The decisive battle will not be fought by the Luftwaffe on the day of invasion. It has already been fought and lost in the months leading up to it. The outcome is now a matter of sequence, not chance. For Galland, this is not a prophecy. It is simply the unavoidable result of what he has already seen in the sky. June 6, 1944 does not begin with silence. It begins with the sound of aircraft. Long before the first soldiers step onto the beaches of Normandy, the sky above France is already alive, filled with engines, formations, and movement in every direction. Bombers, fighters, transport planes, gliders. The air is crowded, controlled, unmistakably allied. For German troops on the ground, the effect is immediate. Columns hesitate, vehicles scatter for cover, communications falter, every movement risks detection, every concentration invites attack. The sky is no longer neutral ground, it belongs to the enemy. The Luftwaffe is not absent that day, but it is overwhelmed. A handful of German fighters rise to challenge the invasion, flying into a sky dominated by thousands of Allied aircraft. They are brave, isolated, and largely powerless. There are no massed formations waiting to counterattack, no reserve of experienced pilots ready to seize the moment. What remains is scattered resistance, courageous but futile. Allied fighters patrol relentlessly. They strafe roads and rail lines. They attack troop movements before they reach the front. They deny German commanders the ability to see, to move, to respond. This is not improvisation. It is the execution of a plan made possible months earlier. Adolf Galland understands this the moment reports arrive. The invasion is not succeeding because of surprise alone, or even because of overwhelming numbers on the beaches. It is succeeding because the Luftwaffe cannot contest the sky above them. The decisive battle has already been fought. The beaches of Normandy are merely where the consequences become visible. German forces fight without air cover, without reconnaissance, without the ability to maneuver in daylight. They are pinned, isolated, and slowly crushed beneath a weight they cannot escape. For Galland, there is no shock in this outcome, only confirmation. What he saw over Germany months earlier, escorts that did not turn back, fighters that stayed, has led inevitably to this moment. On D-Day, the Allied armies land in France. But the war that made it possible was won in the air long before the first landing craft touched the shore. When the fighting on the beaches begins, the outcome of the air war is already settled. Air superiority is often described in numbers: aircraft produced, sorties flown, enemies destroyed. But those figures miss the deeper truth. Air superiority is freedom. It is the freedom to move while the enemy must hide, the freedom to see while the enemy is blind, the freedom to concentrate force while the enemy is forced to scatter. On D-Day, the Allies possess that freedom completely. German units cannot maneuver in daylight. Supplies are delayed or destroyed. Commanders issue orders without knowing whether they can be carried out. Every road, every rail line, every open field becomes a potential trap. None of this happens because German soldiers lack courage. It happens because the sky above them no longer belongs to them. Adolf Galland understands that this is the real lesson of the war in the air. Victory does not come from a single technological marvel or heroic last stand. It comes from endurance, from building a system that can remain present relentlessly until the opponent can no longer function. By the time Allied troops land in Normandy, that system has already done its work. The ground battle is brutal, the cost is high, but the direction of the war is no longer in doubt, because long before the first soldier reaches the shore, the sky has already decided who can fight and who cannot. Adolf Galland survives the war. He lives long enough. To see Germany in ruins, its cities broken, its airfields silent. Long enough to reflect on a conflict that consumed an entire generation of pilots on both sides, men who fought bravely inside systems far larger than themselves. Galland is often remembered for his victories, his rank, his defiance of authority, but his most important contribution comes not from what he achieved in combat, but from what he understood. He saw that modern war is not decided in moments of drama, but in margins, in range, in endurance, in the quiet mathematics of logistics and time. He understood that once the balance of the air was lost, everything else followed inevitably, no matter how determined the soldiers on the ground might be. D-Day did not surprise him. It confirmed him. The skies over Normandy were not the beginning of Germany's defeat, but its consequence. The result of decisions made months earlier, factories retooled, doctrines rewritten, and pilots lost one by one. Galland had seen this future long before it arrived, not because he could predict the outcome of the war, but because he understood how wars are truly won. Sometimes history turns not on a single battle or a single day, but on the moment when one side realizes the fight can no longer be sustained. If this is a story worth remembering, share your thoughts below.